Exactly 5,999 sailors are permanently sealed inside a $13 billion floating nuclear fortress, sleeping mere feet away from 4 million pounds of highly explosive aviation fuel. They navigate this claustrophobic steel maze daily, knowing one single microsecond of distraction guarantees absolute catastrophe. How do these sailors actually survive this extreme psychological pressure, cooker without breaking? Let's step aboard and uncover the brutal, hidden reality of life on a United States supercarrier. Right at this exact millisecond, a 100,000-ton leviathan of sovereign American steel is aggressively tearing through the volatile waters of the Western Pacific. This is the USS Gerald R. Ford, CVN-78, an apex predator measuring 1,092 feet long and towering 25 stories above the crushing ocean waves. Deep inside its radioactive heart, exactly 5,999 sailors are enduring a punishing 9-month deployment. They operate entirely cut off from the civilian world, suspended in a highly dangerous maritime environment where the nearest safe harbor is thousands of nautical miles away. The psychological contrast between this invincible nuclear fortress and the fragile human beings keeping it alive is absolutely staggering. Above deck, twin A-1B nuclear reactors generate an earth-shattering 300 megawatts of electrical power, launching 44,000-pound F/A 18E Super Hornets into the sky every 25 seconds. Below deck, the staggering reality of absolute human confinement rapidly sets in for the exhausted crew. A 19-year-old aviation machinist's mate exists in a microscopic metal box measuring exactly 72 inches long and a suffocating 26 inches wide. This colossal warship projects lethal, unmatched power across a 500 nautical mile combat radius. Yet its highly trained operators are granted roughly 13 square feet of personal space. They call these brutal sleeping quarters coffin racks for a highly accurate and deeply depressing reason. Stacked precisely 3 tiers high inside a claustrophobic steel compartment. The bottom and middle bunks offer a maximum of 20 inches of vertical clearance between a sailor's face and the cold metal above. You cannot sit up, you can barely roll over, and your only physical comfort is a highly rigid 3-inch fire retardant mattress. Every single breath you take is shared with exactly 60 other warriors, crammed tightly into the exact same congested berthing compartment. True privacy is a civilian luxury that simply does not exist aboard a United States Navy supercarrier. You are living permanently inside a relentless, sensory-overloaded industrial factory that literally never stops operating. The heavy, low-frequency vibration of 4 massive 30-ton bronze propellers constantly rattles your bones while you desperately try to secure a few uninterrupted hours of sleep. Heavy, watertight steel hatches slam shut endlessly. Piercing collision alarms ring without warning, and neon red battle lights aggressively illuminate cramped passageways during intense night combat operations. Toxic aviation fuel fumes permanently lace the artificially circulated air, creating a harsh, inescapable metallic scent that embeds itself deep into every single uniform. Your entire physical existence for 270 uninterrupted days is ruthlessly reduced to one upright metal locker, measuring a pathetic 10 inches wide, 22 inches deep, and 41 inches tall. This tiny steel vault holds absolutely everything you own. You must share one highly congested washroom, featuring exactly 4 cramped stainless steel sinks and 4 shower stalls, with dozens of shipmates working completely opposite shifts. There is 0 natural sunlight, 0 fresh ocean breeze, and absolutely 0 physical escape from the crushing psychological weight of this extreme claustrophobia. Yet, despite this profound physical deprivation, these exactly 5,999 sailors execute incredibly complex tactical doctrines with absolute unwavering perfection. They endure this brutal, hyper-compressed existence because they possess an unbreakable, steel-forged discipline that civilians fundamentally cannot ever fully comprehend. They willingly surrender their basic comfort and privacy to transform this floating labyrinth into humanity's most lethal combat platform. This absolutely incredible human resilience, tested relentlessly inside these tight metal corridors, remains the true foundational pillar of American maritime supremacy. Surviving this suffocating steel tomb is merely the first brutal physiological test these highly dedicated sailors must conquer on a daily basis. But once they finally crawl out of those dark, microscopic bunks, exactly how does the Navy physically fuel 5,999 starving warriors to keep this hyper-aggressive war machine fighting? The answer lies inside a relentless industrial culinary complex hidden deep within the ship's titanium-reinforced lower decks. To physically sustain peak combat readiness, the United States Navy operates a massive floating restaurant that never shuts its heavy steel doors. Exactly 17,891 hot, nutrient-dense meals must be flawlessly prepared, cooked, and served every single day. This is not a standard civilian cafeteria operation. This is a highly complex, high-stakes logistical military campaign executed flawlessly under extreme pressure. Spread strategically across the massive Nimitz-class carrier are up to 7 distinct galleys functioning as independent, high-capacity food factories. These highly sanitized kitchens operate continuously across 24 grueling hours to feed all 5,999 souls on board. There are absolutely no frozen microwave dinners here. Instead, a highly disciplined army of exactly 114 trained culinary specialists commands an arsenal of heavy-duty cooking hardware. They battle intense heat, sharp, unpredictable vessel movements, and physical exhaustion simultaneously. The breakfast shift violently kicks off at exactly 0300 hours. While the rest of the world comfortably sleeps, these culinary specialists aggressively attack brutal 16-hour workdays. They are permanently stationed in front of roaring 400-degree industrial ovens large enough to swallow commercial ranges whole. To fuel this floating fortress, they crack and scramble exactly 15,400 fresh eggs every single morning. They simultaneously fry 3,500 pounds of thick-cut bacon and brew 800 gallons of black coffee just to jumpstart the crew. Feeding a hyper-aggressive war machine requires uncompromising mathematical precision. By dinner, the crew will fiercely consume exactly 4,850 pounds of roasted poultry, 3,200 pounds of seasoned beef, and 5,000 pounds of fresh vegetables. The Department of Defense mandates exact nutritional standards to maintain lethal physical readiness during these brutal deployments. Male sailors must strictly consume precisely 2,850 calories daily, while females strictly require exactly 2,100 calories to sustain high-tempo flight operations. Every single gram of protein, sodium, and fat is surgically calculated by the meticulous supply officer. To prevent severe psychological fatigue, the military enforces a strict 21-day rotating menu cycle. This rotational doctrine ensures that exhausted aviation mechanics and stressed radar operators do not eat the exact same meal twice. They boldly serve breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a fourth operational meal, known exclusively as midrats. Midnight rations are explicitly designed for the graveyard shift operators, delivering an essential caloric lifeline through the darkest hours. But an aircraft carrier cannot physically carry 9 months of fresh provisions inside its heavily armed hull. The sheer volume of daily consumption requires a highly dangerous maritime maneuver called underway replenishment, or UNREP, every 7 to 10 days. A massive 49,000-ton fast combat support ship pulls aggressively alongside the moving carrier. The two colossal vessels steam perfectly parallel, maintaining exactly 150 feet of separation, while violently crashing through turbulent ocean swells at high speeds. Heavy steel cables are fired explosively across the violently churning water, physically connecting the two sovereign warships. Through this precarious, high-tension lifeline, between 400,000 and 1 million pounds of critical food supplies are rapidly transferred. Giant frozen pallets of premium meats, fresh produce, and dry goods are swung across the ocean via tension rigs. Sikorsky, MH-60S. Seahawk helicopters simultaneously execute vertical replenishment, dropping heavy 3,000-pound cargo nets directly onto the active flight deck. This high-stakes transfer operation leaves absolute zero margin for human error. One snapped steel tension cable can instantly crush a sailor or send vital rations plummeting into the dark oceanic abyss. Yet, the deck department meticulously executes this terrifying logistical ballet with absolute, unwavering perfection. Once massive pallets hit the steel deck, an organized army of logistics sailors instantly swarms the cargo, rapidly transporting it into -10-degree subterranean freezers. When the carrier pushes aggressively into highly contested, hostile waters far beyond the safe reach of supply chains, fresh ingredients vanish rapidly. The elite culinary team must then pivot seamlessly to canned goods, dehydrated tactical rations, and deep frozen reserves. Yet, they fight relentlessly to keep the psychological morale of exactly 5,999 sailors violently high. They operate a dedicated onboard bakery, proudly pulling exactly 10,200 fresh, incredibly fragrant chocolate chip cookies from the heavy ovens daily. That microscopic taste of warm sugar acts as a powerful psychological weapon. It forcefully delivers a deeply emotional sensory reminder of the distant homes these warriors swore to protect. The ship's galleys remain the absolute beating heart of the carrier, continuously pumping warm morale directly into a steel beast. But even with a fully fueled physical body, how do these deeply isolated individuals survive the slow, suffocating crush of mental darkness during extended combat operations? The fully fueled body must immediately plunge into a merciless gauntlet of relentless operational tempo. Surviving this suffocating steel tomb requires absolute physical exhaustion from every single enlisted operator on board. The standard carrier doctrine dictates brutal 12 to 16-hour workdays, running 7 days a week without a holiday. A 19-year-old nuclear machinist's mate routinely logs a staggering 100 hours of grueling manual labor every single week. They operate deep inside the propulsion plant, surrounded by 600 psi steam lines and ambient temperatures exceeding 115 degrees Fahrenheit daily. For the vast majority of these 5,999 sailors, daily reality is a fluorescent-lit steel purgatory completely devoid of natural sunlight. They navigate a massive 1,092-foot labyrinth of heavily congested, claustrophobic passageways located up to 10 levels below the waterline. They can easily endure 90 consecutive days without ever seeing the sky or feeling an ocean breeze. They must perfectly memorize over 3,360 individual compartments and 2,500 watertight doors just to survive the daily transit. After completing a grueling 8-hour watch, sleep is forcefully delayed by mandatory 2-hour ship-wide cleaning stations and rigorous damage control drills constantly. Above this subterranean grind lies the violent 4.5-acre flight deck, universally classified as the most lethal industrial work environment on Earth. A highly synchronized army of sailors, designated by strictly color-coded jerseys, navigates a terrifying daily ballet of heavy machinery. Yellow-shirted aviation bosun's mates aggressively direct 66,000-pound F/A-18 E Super Hornets, taxiing mere inches from a perilous 60-foot drop into the ocean. Jet blast deflectors constantly redirect 2,000-degree Fahrenheit exhaust plumes, possessing enough kinetic thermal energy to instantly melt civilian vehicles. One single misstep on this violently pitching deck guarantees instant catastrophic tragedy without any hesitation. Launching and recovering combat aircraft at sea demands terrifying, razor-thin margins of absolute survival. When a returning EA-18G Growler aggressively slams onto the non-skid flight deck, it is traveling at precisely 150 miles per hour. The highly trained pilot has exactly 2 seconds to snag one of 3 1.5-inch thick, high-tensile steel Mark 7 arresting wires to violently halt the aircraft in just 320 feet. The deafening mechanical roar easily exceeds 140 decibels, demanding mandatory double hearing protection from every single aviation operator. This deafening violence never truly stops, operating relentlessly across 24-hour combat cycles. This constant adrenaline and relentless physical exhaustion aggressively erode the human mind. Being completely isolated from spouses and children for 9 agonizing months triggers profound emotional distress across the entire carrier strike group. To actively combat this suffocating mental darkness, modern supercarriers now deploy heavily sophisticated psychological countermeasures. The Navy embeds licensed clinical social workers, civilian psychologists, and exactly 10 dedicated military chaplains directly into the crew. Some strike groups even deploy highly trained facility therapy dogs directly onto the ship, proactively neutralizing severe mental fatigue before it permanently compromises combat readiness. Physical fitness operates as the ultimate psychological release valve for this highly stressed, heavily armed crew. Modern supercarriers strategically feature up to 9 separate, fully equipped fitness centers meticulously distributed throughout the colossal nuclear vessel. These are absolutely state-of-the-art gymnasiums packed with thousands of pounds of heavy free weights, advanced elliptical machines, and combat boxing rings aggressively utilized 24 hours a day. The Morale, Welfare, and Recreation Department even organizes massive 5,000-meter endurance runs directly on the active flight deck whenever tactical flight operations temporarily cease completely and safely. To successfully bridge the terrifying gap of oceanic isolation, the Department of Defense heavily prioritizes advanced digital connectivity. Upgraded commercial satellite broadband systems now actively pierce the massive electronic isolation of deep-water combat deployments. Sailors constantly utilize precisely scheduled network bandwidth to send encrypted emails, initiate quick video calls, and access heavily monitored social media feeds deep inside the volatile Philippine Sea. They desperately cling to these digital lifelines. A brief 5-minute pixelated video call with a beloved spouse operates as a massive psychological armor against the crushing oceanic isolation daily. Sweating violently alongside your fellow shipmates fundamentally reinforces the unbreakable bonds of military brotherhood required for absolute survival. They fiercely push through the blinding physical exhaustion, the lethal deck danger, and the crushing emotional loneliness because they are permanently bound by a sacred constitutional oath. Every single enlisted sailor and commanding officer actively understands that their personal daily suffering directly translates into unmatched global deterrence and absolute international maritime stability. But when the agonizing 270-day combat deployment finally concludes, and this colossal nuclear titan safely returns to its home port, exactly what compels these exhausted warriors to voluntarily sign up and endure this grueling nightmare over again? The ultimate definitive answer completely defies standard modern civilian logic today. They do not voluntarily endure this brutal 270-day maritime crucible for financial wealth or personal glory. These exactly 5,999 brave American sailors actively choose to re-enlist because they fundamentally believe in a strategic mission vastly larger than themselves entirely. They possess a profound, unshakable understanding that their physical presence inside hostile international waters single-handedly guarantees global economic stability continuously. Every single operator aboard this colossal 100,000-ton nuclear fortress knows they project absolute power globally. They understand perfectly that a single Nimitz-class carrier strike group effectively deters hostile geopolitical adversaries from initiating catastrophic international conflicts. Their daily, agonizing sacrifices directly secure over 80% of global maritime trade routes, representing trillions of dollars passing through highly contested naval choke points like the Strait of Hormuz. They act constantly as the ultimate invincible shield protecting the entire modern free world. This immense geopolitical responsibility violently forges an unbreakable psychological brotherhood deep inside the reinforced steel hull. When you bleed, sweat, and fiercely fight alongside the exact same men and women for thousands of consecutive hours, you permanently transcend mere superficial friendship. You become a highly synchronized, lethal combat family heavily bound by shared extreme adversity and pure survival instinct. This deep Steel-forged camaraderie represents an elite, highly exclusive human experience that absolutely cannot ever be replicated anywhere in the modern civilian sector. This elite military excellence is routinely proven in highly active, lethal combat zones globally. During the grueling 275-day Red Sea deployment, the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower Strike Group actively faced relentless daily kinetic attacks from highly organized, heavily armed hostile land-based forces. These exhausted but violently determined sailors successfully tracked and aggressively destroyed precisely 155 inbound kamikaze drones and dozens of supersonic anti-ship ballistic missiles. They operated effectively at a ferocious, sustained combat pace entirely unseen since the vicious, bloody naval battles of World War II in the vast Pacific. Under terrifying, continuous enemy fire, the human machinery of the Supercarrier never faltered for a single microsecond. The exactly 5,999 sailors executed their highly classified tactical doctrines perfectly, neutralizing massive kinetic threats before they could critically impact vulnerable civilian cargo vessels navigating the perilous maritime corridor. For their absolute flawless performance under extreme pressure, thousands of these deeply exhausted operators rightfully earned the highly coveted Combat Action Ribbon. That incredibly prestigious strip of fabric permanently validates their immense unmatched courage under lethal enemy fire. Civilian society sleeps comfortably under the heavy blanket of freedom, heavily provided by these invisible maritime warriors. While ordinary citizens worry about daily traffic or mundane office politics, a 19-year-old aviation ordnance man is aggressively loading a 1,000-pound GBU 32 Joint Direct Attack munition onto an active fighter jet. They execute this highly dangerous ordnance transfer at exactly 0200 hours in the freezing, pitch-black ocean while standing on a violently pitching non-skid flight deck. They silently absorb immense physical suffering so that the rest of the democratic world never actually has to experience it. The colossal 106,300-ton United States Navy Supercarrier is undeniably the most sophisticated, highly destructive engineering marvel ever constructed by human hands. However, the twin A4W nuclear reactors and the 66,000-pound supersonic strike fighters are entirely useless without the unbreakable human spirit commanding them. The ultimate, unmatched weapon system in the American military arsenal is absolutely not made of cold titanium, dense depleted uranium, or advanced silicon microchips. The absolute ultimate weapon is the highly disciplined, profoundly dedicated American sailor standing the eternal watch. We owe these phenomenal 5,999 men and women our absolute, unwavering respect, our unyielding support, and immense national gratitude for their phenomenal courage and relentless dedication daily. Their daily, invisible sacrifices aggressively maintain the fragile balance of modern global peace across all highly contested, deeply dangerous international waters spanning across the entire globe. If this intensive deep dive into the brutal, highly restricted reality of carrier life gave you a profound new appreciation for our brave, incredibly tough military heroes, please forcefully hit that like button right now today. Subscribe to the YouTube channel immediately to actively help us continuously share these incredible, highly factual stories of unrivaled American military excellence and absolute maritime dominance with the entire watching world.